Welcome to Your Story Doesn't End Here, the mental health podcast for military and veterans. I'm your host, Rachel, and my mission with this podcast is to be a voice for those who don't have a voice, bring awareness to mental health issues, and provide value and solutions to help make life more abundant.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming back for another episode of Your Story Doesn't End Here. Today's guest is Callie. She served 10 years active duty before medically retiring in 2020 for mental health. She is currently a parent to twin boys and an entrepreneur, hoping to bridge the gap between mental health, fitness, and nutrition and pregnancy and birth outcomes in the U.S. by providing education and support to families as a doula, personal trainer, and mental health advocate. Callie, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Rachel. I guess I want to start out with my story. It feels like it's like a lot longer before my actual career, but I think it's important to note, so kind of my whole military story happened to start when I was around 11 years old. I watched my brother graduate from Marine Corps boot camp, and watching like the Navy band play or the Marine Corps band play and being able to go to Pendleton and all that stuff like really inspired me kind of from a really young age. And but I wanted to join the military since I was 11, and I was really passionate about it. And my brother served 3 tours over in the Middle East right after 9/11. He joined right after 2001, and then he got out and became an advocate for veterans, teaching like sustainable agriculture in California. And so he was really a big inspiration for me. So when I finally was able to enlist, I had this really long history of sort of expectations and desire to be in the military and thrive. So I enlisted in 2011, and I feel like I waited forever to go to MEPS and go to boot camp. And I just like really excelled right off the bat. I was like meritoriously promoted in boot camp, and then I had really high scores when I was in A school. And I ended up going to a Marine command when as my first duty station in Hawaii, and it was just like everything just felt really ideal. I ended up having all these great opportunities, and I remember like my leadership in Hawaii told me, they're like, you could absolutely be like the first female MCPON. And I kind of like grabbed onto that and really ran with it. So that's kind of like how it started. I was super high energy, and I really wanted to like do everything right and do everything by the book. And I just tried to learn everything that I could. And I ended up being selected to go on a deployment to Sicily. And it was a small group debt, which I know that you're familiar with. So there's only, I think, about 15 of us, including our leadership. And so I was able to, like a brand new E4, I made rank first time up taking the exam, and was able to have this opportunity, and I was super excited. And I kind of like feel like I had everything going for me. And then when I went to Sicily, I was only like 3 weeks in, and I had my 21st birthday, and my coworkers like brought me out for my birthday, and they like made me a cake, and we had like a party in the mech shop and all of this stuff. And it was like my first taste of like what the military I think is really like for a lot of people, because they like brought me out off base in a foreign country on my 21st birthday and got me drunk. And then they were kind of just like, all right, cool, like we're gonna go home. You can find your own way home, right? And I was like, yeah, sure, I guess. And that night I ended up being assaulted for the first time in the Navy by 2 senior enlisted members. And I feel like that's kind of like where it all went downhill. But at the same time, it wasn't, because I went on to, after that, I like went home. I ended up going through the whole reporting process. I went unrestricted. I went to the Article 32 hearing. I went back to Sicily twice to try to bring my offenders to justice. And I think like that's a story that you really hear a lot of that's really common, is like I went through all of this stuff and like did everything that I could, and they were acquitted. And what I think not a lot of people are familiar with that I wanted to mention is, so there's a law called the Rape Shield Law, and it's basically saying that you can't use someone else's like prior sexual history against them in a sexual assault case. which is a really great argument, right? Or a really great law that protects individuals. It's like basically saying like whatever your sexual history is, whether it's abundant or whether it's absent, like in the case of an assault, they can't use that as like some sort of justification as to why something happened. So I thought that I was protected from that because the NCIS agents and the lawyers that represented my offenders and everybody like asked me all these really crazy questions. But they ended up, instead of using like that argument, they were like, well, you drank underage, so you had an idea of what alcohol would do to you before you turned 21. And so there's no reason why you should have lost your faculties at this birthday party that you went to. And that ended up being the argument that got them acquitted. And I remember like being on the stand, like, and it was just kind of like, well, I mean, I have nothing to say. Like, I have no argument now. So that was really hard. I ended up developing like a lot of really bad anxiety. I couldn't go into grocery stores for a long time because I would always see them at the grocery stores in Sicily. It's a really small base in a really rural area, so there's not like a lot of places that you could go. Yeah, my supervisors at my home command in Hawaii ended up treating me differently, even though they weren't associated with the command that I was with on deployment, and they weren't associated with the individuals who were the offenders. Like, just because they knew that had happened, they treated me differently, and it made it difficult to get qualifications, and I was treated differently at work. And I had a supervisor who was actually also my victim advocate, would write me a counseling shit like every week for just kind of like nonsense stuff. And so I ended up being able to request to go limited duty, which was what I didn't want to do, because I felt like that was kind of the next step to getting discharged. And I wanted so badly to be in the military, and I wanted so badly to succeed. But I ended up going limited duty and working at the health clinic in Hawaii out of rate for, I think it was like 6 or 8 months. And they really gave me an opportunity there. I told them, I was like, I'm limited duty, but I don't want to get discharged. Like, I will do whatever I can do to get a good eval coming out of here so that I can stay in the military. And they were like, all right, cool. So they gave me all different kinds of opportunities. And I ended up transferring to Whitby with accolades, with like a great eval, not even working in rate. And I felt like I kind of had this new opportunity to start over again. And when I went to Whidbey Island, I made E5, I made E6 first time up, and I just like knew that I was going to make chief. I knew that all of these things were going to happen, and I just like started to love my job again after all these issues that happened in Hawaii. I developed a drinking problem in Hawaii. I was hospitalized for suicidal ideation, suicide attempts. And I had all these issues. I actually never reported it. Well, I reported it later on when I was going through my retirement process, but I actually ended up being assaulted again by a gentleman in Hawaii that I watched him try to get on his motorcycle to leave. He had been drinking, and I was like, listen, I'm within walking distance of my apartment. You can come and crash on my sofa. He was a Marine. And I'd never met him before. And I like let him sleep on my sofa, and he ended up assaulting me that night also. And I never reported that until like later on, like well into the future when I was undergoing my retirement processing. But I think that like all of those situations, like drinking too much, and like it all kind of just became like, that's what I deserved after that initial assault and after that initial acquittal. And it just was really hard for me to come out of it. But going to Whidbey Island, I feel like I had kind of a new start. I was going on a new platform. Nobody knew me. I was married and then divorced, so my name was even different. And I really excelled again in the military, thinking like I could totally do 20 years of this. I loved my job, and I loved being able to serve other sailors. And I think I was pretty good at it. I like to think that I was. And I went on a few other deployments, and after my last deployment, on my way home, I was actually assaulted again by one of my subordinates, and I ended up getting away, but that kind of was like the last straw. And it really came down to this argument that I had in my head for like the next year after that, when I was trying to process it, of like, if I get out of the military, that's one less person that can advocate for people. And if I get out and they stay in, then that's like one more offender who's going to end up making rank. And I struggled with that a lot and felt a lot of guilt when I was going through my second limb due period and ended up getting medically retired, of like, I felt like I failed. And that was a really difficult thing to process. Like, not only did I, and I felt like I was responsible for it. Like, not only did I allow myself to get assaulted multiple times in the military, and I still couldn't bring my offenders to justice, even though I went unrestricted, even though I did report it, even though I was upfront and honest about it, and, you know, tried to keep all my shit together. But I like still failed. And even now, I'm almost a year and a half separated. I still have those moments where I feel like there are people, there are women, especially in the military, who like needed me to be there for them, and I can't do that anymore. And so I go back and forth between feeling that way, like I failed, and I also feel like the Navy failed me as I was getting out and I was, you know, getting my DD-214 and stuff like that. Like, I didn't fail, the Navy failed me. And I really like the other side of it, the other way that I think about it is like, the Navy showed me through my retirement process that they would prefer to have males who might have offended than have females who are willing to make a change. And that's just how the Navy was. And that's the environment that they want to nurture. And I can't, you know, be a part of that anymore. So there's this like really crazy dichotomy that I go through, like back and forth all the time, where it's like, I'm supposed to be there and I'm supposed to protect these people. And then also, like, you know, the Navy made its argument. They said, we don't want you. We would rather have these other people. And it's just made clearer to know that all of my offenders are still in the military, and all of them have made rank since the assault happened. So the thing that I struggle with the most, I think, is just having to say, like, I did my best. And I know that I did help a lot of people. Even when I was in Hawaii, I think I had like 5 or 6 girls who came to me and they're like, hey, like, I really need to talk to you about this. And I wasn't a victim advocate at the time. And I ended up being able to like secretly remove them from their commands and be like, hey, chief, like, I have to take this sailor to go do this thing. Like, no, you can't know about it. And I ended up being able to keep all of their reports restricted, even though I wasn't a victim advocate, and like able to get them the resources that they needed. So like, I know that I did a lot of good things. And then I also ended up being a victim advocate the last 2 years that I was in as an E6 and helping to run the program a little bit. Yeah. So I guess in the long run, I ended up getting pregnant with twins while I was going through my retirement process, and really fell in love with kind of like the birth support world, and ended up becoming a doula. And it really helped me challenge a lot of like my biases, and it helped me process a lot of my own trauma also, of like kind of being able to step back and think like, there's a system and there's like things that people don't have control over, and they weren't my fault. And some of them probably weren't other people's fault either. But right now I can be in a place where I can try to change that environment. And right now, that's kind of like my long-term goal, is to try to figure out how can I, from the civilian side, from the veteran side, how can I help to contribute to people, and to women especially. But I mean, to people, I want to be inclusive to everybody, because I think that like this is a problem that affects more than just women. And just try to create better environments everywhere. Since I separated, I've definitely sort of shifted my focus to more towards women and pregnant women and families. But I do hope to, over time, be able to connect more with veterans, and with women, active duty women also. I intend to stay near Whidbey Island, and I want to be able to work on the base eventually, and provide just any kind of support that is possibly necessary. Right now, I think my goal, my entrepreneurial goal, is really fluid. I'm just kind of trying to feel like what the need is and how to best represent that need and best support it. And I'm not sure exactly what that looks like yet, but I know that part of it is like just being open and being able to talk about like myself and my story and do it in a way where other people can try to relate to me. So yeah, I think that that's pretty much it.
Okay. I can relate so much to you, like, and I think a lot of females can, when it comes to like just feeling like we need to be the change in the military and like having this like feeling of like unfinished when we get out. Like I know I can personally relate to it. And what I think is cool about what you're doing, and here in a little bit, I'll have you share where people can find you if they want to talk to you more about what it is you're doing now. But I love how you took that and you like transformed it into something that could serve people outside of the military, outside of you being active duty, I should say. Um, I would love to ask, as far as, if it's okay, as far as like
Yeah.
everything you went through with the separate process. I don't know if you really got super involved in like mental health when you were in the military, but did you feel like you were well supported from, I guess, really all standpoints, like a sapper, a command, a medical? Did you feel like you were supported through those processes?
Yeah, I mean, so as far as mental health goes, that first command, I think I had some really great leaders in that first command. And I can't like deny that. I had some really terrible ones also. But aside from that, like going through my whole career, I had a lot of support. I'm not sure if I just like got lucky or if there's something about like my personality or something like that that made it easy for people to want to serve me or like what. But I feel like overall my mental health journey in the military was really, I mean, it was as good as it could have been considering all of the shit that I went through. I actually was inpatient 4 different times. And the last time I ended up going to a program in Utah called Strong Hope, which is actually an active duty military program. And they have a women's program and a men's program, and you're pretty separate. I think that you like have meals together, but otherwise like you live with only females on the floor that you live on, and you have like your therapies, and they offer like, I mean, almost any kind of new therapy that they can have, they offer there. And it was a really incredible experience. And I actually still have friends from there, and I still use a lot of the tools that I learned there. As far as like the military mental health on the bases that I was at, it was really lacking. But I had a really good case manager who like found these external resources for me and was able to get them approved. So as far as like my overall mental health treatment, it was really good, but it's really hard for, if I was just like having a bad day, or if I just wanted to talk to somebody, or, you know, any of that stuff, like that kind of happens, I think, on a day-to-day basis in the military. Like those resources are really hard to come by. I think that they were getting better, at least on Whitby when I was leaving. I know that Fleet and Family had opened up some new programs. But I still think that they weren't very well advertised, and I couldn't tell you like to what degree COVID has affected those things. So I think that they're trying. But I also think like I learned really early on in my career that if somebody tells you no, that's the wrong person to ask. There's an answer out there for everybody, you know, and there's a resource out there for everybody. And like the first no should not be like the first answer that you accept. And I think that that's really what helped me, was I was like, no, I can't. Like, this is not an acceptable route for me to take, for you to just be like, no, sorry, you can't go to medical, or no, sorry, there aren't resources available to you. So I think like that's what I would encourage anybody who's active or even a veteran right now to just say, like, if somebody's telling you no, or somebody's telling you that that resource doesn't exist, like I assure you it does, and it might not be easy to get to, but it's out there. Strong Hope is a really amazing program. I couldn't speak highly enough about them, and I know that there's other ones out there. So,
What would you suggest? I know you said that there's some things that are getting better, but what would you suggest would make things better for people that maybe just want someone to like talk to in the moment? I guess what programs would you implement if you were in charge and could make an impact in that arena?
I think that there should just be, I feel like there should be a more bridges between certain programs. I talked with the SAPR leaders on Whidbey Island about having a fitness support group where like SAPR victim advocates or even people who are involved in the SAPR program in any way, shape, or form could go and be, like go and meet and actually go do things and learn like coping skills and learn these things. So I think that there just needs to be more people, and I think that there needs to be more a willingness to be inventive and a willingness to try things and a willingness to like spend the time and energy and money on new ideas. It's not enough to just have, a therapist or a social worker sitting in an office that's like, oh, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. Like, I think that what's more important is like, how can we find like real-time alternatives to help like establish better coping skills and establish better connections with people, and also have less like negativity and reprisal when people do want help or do need extra time or extra space. I definitely benefited from having leaders who were like, hey, like, you don't need to tell me what's going on. If you need space, like just pop in and be like, hey chief, or like, hey, whomever, like I'm going to go. And they're like, all right, cool. Like text me or whatever. Maybe I established that trust, and that's why I was given that opportunity. Maybe I just had really good leaders. I'm not sure, but I think that those sort of avenues or those different outlets and better resources that can just be more practical than just talking to somebody. I think that would be really beneficial.
I absolutely agree with you. I've heard from several people that just kind of establishing their own thing outside of Navy mental health was really helpful for them. So I'm glad that you brought that up. As far as what you are doing now, where can people find you if they want to reach out or if they want to take advantage of talking to you or working with you?
Absolutely. So my business is called Fit Into Parenthood. It's Fit Into Parenthood on Instagram and also Facebook. Those are probably the easiest places to reach out to me personally. I'm hoping to, right now I'm just kind of starting out. I teach like group fitness classes in the Skagit Valley area. I'm a personal trainer. I'm also a doula and offer like pregnancy planning and consulting, and just try to like be a resource for people. In the long term, I would like to be able to provide support to not only the local hospitals, but also to like Naval Station Everett, Naval Station Whidbey Island. TRICARE just recently is starting a pilot program to cover doula support for military families. And I think that that's just a really amazing thing, because I can't think of how many people I know who were active duty and how to deal with pregnancy without their families, or spouses of military members who had to deliver babies without their spouses at home because they were on deployment. And so a doula, I think, is a great way to bridge that gap, and is like proven scientifically to improve birth outcomes. So I'm really excited that TRICARE is getting on board with that, and I really want to be able to be a part of like those conversations and being in those rooms when that's happening. And that's going to hopefully just be like my way that I can contribute to help making the military better.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Callie. And I appreciate you sharing your story and your input. And I will make sure for anyone listening to this episode to link all of her information below so that you can check her out or reach out to her. And again, thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen in today. Each week, I'll be bringing you value in the mental health space and its direct impact on service members and veterans. If you feel you personally got value today from this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a 5-star rating and review and share this to your audience. Until next time, remember, your story matters, your mental health matters, and your story doesn't end here.